The Big Ten West is up for grabs. Who's going to come out of this? Could be settled this weekend. Iowa and Wisconsin play each other. Lucky for us. Lucky for you. Locked On Big Ten starts right now.
You are Locked On Big Ten, your daily podcast on the Big Ten Conference. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On Big Ten. I'm Craig Shemon. Thank you for making us your first listen each and every day. We're free and available wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube. It's part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And today's episode is brought to you by Jase Medical. Empower yourself when you purchase a Jase case, providing you with a personal supply of 5 antibiotics that treat over 50 infections. Get yours today at jasemedical.com. That's Jase medical.com. Who's coming out of the West? We may have a good idea this weekend. We'll discuss that. Plus, Harbaugh is about to get paid, and we've got the latest hoops poll for men's basketball. That is out, and our power rankings for football. You don't want to miss those. And also, be sure to subscribe. Click the black button down below and help me out, please. And you can follow Locked On Big Ten for free wherever you get your podcast. That way, you'll get the latest episode of this podcast as soon as it becomes available each and every day. So, who's it going to be? Who's going to come out of the West? Well, Iowa is 5-1, and Wisconsin is 4-1, and they play each other on Saturday at 4 o'clock on Fox. So, just first glance thumbnail right off the top before we get into it. I think Wisconsin has more talent, but I got to tell you, Iowa fans, I know people have a lot of complaints about the team. I'm impressed how they just keep winning football games. And I think Wisconsin's schedule is a little tougher down the stretch. And so I think Iowa, if Iowa wins this game this weekend, may have the inside track. We'll get into all of it. You know, we do spend a lot of time on this podcast, and the media does as well, talking about the Big Ten East. Look, it's the best division in the country, bar none. You talk about Michigan and talk about Ohio State and Penn State. It seems like a foregone conclusion that the winner of that division will go on to win the Big Ten championship and then go on into the college football playoffs. However, whoever comes out of the East, they're going to have to play somebody from the West in the Big Ten championship. And that somebody is going to come out of the West, even though the West has never beaten the East in the Big Ten championship. And, of course, this is the last year that we're having divisions. So, last hurrah for the West. And look, there's a couple of good teams out there in the West that if they make it into a Big Ten championship, they got a puncher's chance. They do. So let's discuss. So midway through the season, it seems like though it's a 2-team race. It does seem like it's going to be either Wisconsin or Iowa. And since they do play each other at Camp Randall this week, let's discuss. Let's look at it. Let's start out with the Iowa Hawkeyes, shall we? First of all, they're a much maligned football team. They really are. It's there's a lot of people that kind of enjoy being miserable about Iowa football. Fans have this love-hate relationship with Kirk Ferentz, his son and offensive coordinator, Brian Ferentz. You all know the story. Hawkeyes need to score 25 points a game in order for the younger Ferentz to keep his job. And they're way behind schedule. Each week they fall further and further behind schedule on that. And to make matters worse, starting quarterback and Michigan transfer Cade McNamara injured himself and his knee, and he's out for the rest of the season. You know, it's too bad, but he really wasn't doing that well going up to that Michigan State game anyway. So they lose him. And then the team also lost everything tight end Luke Lachey a couple weeks prior to that with a season-ending injury. And then, of course, there was the embarrassing 31-0 loss on national TV, prime time at Penn State earlier this year. Who could forget it? In that game, the offense only ran 33 plays. I mean, every which way you looked at it, every which way you sliced it, that Iowa offense was, it was bad. It was bad. It was a struggle. It was a huge embarrassment for the program. But here's the thing. After all that, the Iowa Hawkeyes are 5-1. 5-1. That's pretty good. That's pretty good. You play to win the game. That's the old Herm Edwards statement. You play to win the game. Look, I got a hypothetical question for you Iowa Hawkeye fans. All right. Are you ready for this? Given all that we've talked about with Brian Ferentz and the needing to score 25 points a game, if you, meaning you, Iowa, if Iowa finishes 10-2 this year, but the numbers are bad and they're only averaging like 19 points a game, do you shake the boat? Do you rock the boat? I mean, do you go ahead and 10-2 and you go to the Big Ten championship game and you come out of that and you still fire Brian Ferentz? Serious question. Look, I know coordinators and assistants are fired or move on, even on good teams every year. Happens all the time. But man, 10-2 would be 10-2. Hypothetical situation, but it is possible. And then there is some good news. The Hawkeyes running back, Caleb Johnson, he came back after the ankle injury, stormed back onto the scene with 134 yards against the Purdue Boilermakers. He loves Purdue. I think he rushed for 200 against them last year. Then you got Cooper DeJean, who's one of my favorite players to talk about on this podcast. He's just a defensive attack. He's got an uncanny nose for the football, interceptions. He's an exciting punt returner. He's an electrifying player. So there is some good. There is some excitement around Iowa football. And look, I threw out there 10-2 just for the discussion, and they are 5-1. But if they do get past Wisconsin, sit at 6-1, they could possibly run the table if you look at the rest of their schedule. They got Minnesota, they got Northwestern, they got Rutgers, Illinois, and Nebraska. It's possible. Those are winnable games. It is also possible they could lose all of those games as well, because I think they'll all be very competitive. I don't think anybody's blowing anybody out on any of these particular matchups. So it's there for the taking if they can do it. If they can, and as I've said since last summer, if they can just get a little bit of offense to go with the deal. But I mean, they're winning right now with not much of an offense. So anyway, that is an interesting scenario coming up for the Iowa Hawkeyes. Now, they have to go into Camp Randall, pretty tough place to play, and take on the Wisconsin Badgers. So let's talk about the Badgers for a minute and Luke Fickell's team. They had a bye week before this past weekend, and then they won coming out against Rutgers, 24-13. Badgers are now 4-1. It feels like they're just getting their feet underneath them, too, with a new coach and everything that's going on there. Now, we admit on this podcast, we gave up on the idea of this team converting to an all-new air raid attack, right? Nobody's calling it that. No, we all agree on that. It's just not there. It's not happening. They said that's how they were going to be when Luke Fickell took over, but let's be real, that's just not the case. That's not what Wisconsin football. They still have enough leftover good parts in their running game that they're very good. And look, quarterback Tanner Mordecai, he's never going to be an all air raid, throwing it all over the place kind of quarterback. That's just not who he is. He's a good game manager, and he has some running ability, but his passing numbers are poor. He's only got 3 touchdown passes along with 3 interceptions, but he's run for 4 touchdowns this year. So again, he's got some running ability, and he can manage this team. Plus, this team has a good running game around him. Now, they started off the season with a nice 1-2 punch at running back with Braelon Allen and Chez Malusi. Fortunately, Malusi had the tragic, gruesome injury a couple of weeks ago, out for the season. And so now Allen has had to deliver by himself, and he has. He's capable of it. 2 areas of concern, though, for Wisconsin is that going into the break, and I think they were working on these things, poor tackling. I think the previous game, they missed like 12 tackles in a game. They average missed 12 missed tackles a game. And then some suspect secondary play into defense. Although, take a step back for a minute, Ricardo Hallman tried to change that, had the 95-yard pick 6 last weekend with 4 seconds to go in the half. And by the way, that was his 4th interception. So he's looking around going, wait a minute. People are criticizing the secondary. Don't look at me. I'm doing my job. Got 4 interceptions on the season. That's tied for the most in the country let alone the Big Ten. So the Badgers are sitting at 4-1, and their only loss was that long road trip to Washington State. And that was an ambush game. Absolute ambush, I tell you. What I mean by that, well, listen, I've talked about this before, where Washington State, they feel left out. Washington State and Oregon State, they're the last two teams in the Pac-12 while it has imploded all around them. And we got nowhere to go, and they feel like it's the Big Ten's fault for taking these teams away from the Pac-12. And so when a Big Ten team went out there, it was all hands on deck. The fans, the coaches, the players, they wanted that game. And no matter who the opponent was going to be that day, if it was from the Big Ten, Washington State was going to win that game. And they took it all out on the Badgers. It was like running into a buzzsaw. The Badgers were at the wrong place, the wrong time, on the wrong day. That's all it was. I think I wouldn't put too much into the fact that they lost that football game. But having said all that, and now here they are taking on Iowa this weekend. I think this game may be a little more, it's important for both, but I think it's a little more important for Wisconsin to win this, because I told you what Iowa's schedule is, and those are winnable games coming up. But after next weekend's game at Illinois, they host Ohio State, and that was going to be tough for them. That's on October 28th. So I think Wisconsin, more so than Iowa, I think Wisconsin has less room for error on the schedule, and I think they better get this game this weekend. But I don't know, man. Iowa finds a way to win. That's just what they do. Credit to Kirk Ferentz. If you don't like Brian Ferentz, credit Kirk Ferentz. They are winning some football games. I'd like to hear what you have to think, especially if you are an Iowa Hawkeyes fan or a Wisconsin Badger fan. We always hear from you guys on Twitter at Talk Big Ten number 10, or also on YouTube. A lot of comments from you guys. Always get great reaction from Hawkeyes fans and Badgers fans with what we do here on Locked On Big Ten. Also coming up, Jim Harbaugh is about to get paid. We've been hearing about this lingering contract extension talk going on for like a year now. It's about to happen from what I hear. And we've got our men's basketball media poll out. Tell you who the number one ranked team is in the Big Ten going into basketball season. His practice goes full throttle in the next couple of days. So we got all that coming up. It's just going to be just 1 minute from now on Locked On Big Ten. I want to tell you about Jase Medical. They have a Jase case. It provides 5 life-saving antibiotics for emergency use. And all it takes to get a Jase case is just fill out a simple online form. And in some cases, some people will jump on the phone and talk with a board-certified physician. But you get the ongoing care from physicians on any treatment-related questions. And this is a product that is doctor created and doctor recommended. You get a Jase case like this. And got antibiotics on the inside right there, ready to go. And it's delivered right to your door. And why would you do this? Well, we live in some strange times where disasters happen. You need emergency planning. Pandemics, stuff happens. And supply chains sometimes get interrupted. Don't be caught unprepared. Everyone should be empowered to care for themselves and their loved ones during the unexpected that does happen in life. So here's what I could tell you. Jase Medical, this whole thing is simple. You go online, you fill out a form, then you get prescription life-saving medications right to your door. The Jase case gives you peace of mind so that you're not just hoping you have access to medication in an emergency. Jase Medical makes sure that you have the medication in hand. Save more than $360 by getting these life-saving antibiotics with Jase Medical, plus an additional $20 off if you use my code Locked On. So check it out at jasemedical.com. That's JASE medical.com. All right. Stories out of Ann Arbor are that contract negotiations are moving along swimmingly with Jim Harbaugh. There's no doubt that Michigan has had a lot of success the past couple of years. And there's been a lot of up and down with Harbaugh. There were the beginning years where he couldn't beat Ohio State. There was the pay cut. Now there's this suspension. It's his 9th season, and he is still not among the highest paid coaches in the country or the Big Ten. Now, once upon a time, he was at the beginning, but people were going, look, you're paid like you're Nick Saban, but Saban's winning championships, and we are not beating Ohio State and not beating Michigan State. And so the pay cut came, and a few years later, yada, 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 things are rolling for the Michigan Wolverines right now. So Jim Harbaugh needs a contract that is that measures up, right? So it could be ready to go as early as next month, and it would make him the highest paid coach in the Big Ten. And we'll say, well, what does that mean? Well, Ryan Day at Ohio State currently makes over $10 million a year. He is the highest paid coach in the Big Ten. So start your bidding right there. As soon as we hear anything, we'll let you know here on Locked On Big Ten. Speaking of Michigan football coach Jim Harbaugh, he said in an interview that J.J. McCarthy and USC's Caleb Williams are the top quarterbacks in the country, and he would love if there was an opportunity for the two of them to go head-to-head and play each other. Now, only way that would happen would be in a college football playoff if USC makes it. But I am here to tell you it's not going to happen. USC's defense is horrible. While Caleb Williams and their offense is phenomenal, at Southern Cal, their defense is dreadful. I mean, they score like 45 points a game, but they give up 40 points a game. And it almost cost them this past weekend with a triple overtime game that they barely squeaked by. So, and they got 6 really tough games. I think 5 or 6 of the remaining opponents are all ranked. It's not going to hold up. They're going to get a loss. They're going to have a hiccup. But yeah, I agree with them. It'd be great to see USC and Michigan go head to head and see Caleb Williams versus J.J. McCarthy. But that's what I think about that. We'll see. Offensive player of the week this week in the Big Ten, Ohio State wide receiver Marvin Harrison Jr., his third 100-yard receiving game this season, 8 catches, 163 yards, and a touchdown in their 37-17 win over Maryland. And he was ground zero of that spurt where they were actually trailing and then tied and then scored 27 unanswered points. He was in the middle of all of that. Defensive player of the week, also at Ohio State, safety Josh Proctor. He had a 24-yard pick 6 off of Talia Tagovailoa to give the Buckeyes their first score. When Maryland went up 10-0, he gets the pick 6. Now it's 10-7. Now the crowd's back awake again and back into the game. And he tied a career high with 7 tackles and 1.5 tackles for loss as well. Special teams player of the week in the Big Ten, Iowa punter Torrey Taylor. He had 6 punts versus Purdue for 284 yards, 47-yard average, but he did have 1 punt at 61 yards and 2 other kicks down inside the 20. So congratulations to him. And for the freshman of the week in the Big Ten, breaking news here, it's not a Minnesota player. I mean, it's been a Minnesota running back the last 4 weeks. So this week, and the only other time this year it wasn't a Minnesota running back as freshman of the week in the Big Ten was week 1 when Purdue defensive back Dylan Thieneman won it. Well, guess what? Thieneman won it again this week for the Purdue Boilermakers. He got his team leading 3rd interception of the year. He's only the only freshman in the country with 3 interceptions. He had 8 tackles, 7 solo tackles. And by the way, he's the Big Ten leader in solo tackles and 2nd nationally. So that's pretty good. And he played in a secondary that, of course, this weekend limited Iowa to just 6 of 21 passing for 110 yards. And as I mentioned, it's his 2nd award of the season. So congratulations to him at Purdue. Speaking of Purdue, let's talk some basketball for just a moment, shall we? The Big Ten media poll for men's basketball is out. And Purdue is the preseason number 1 team. They, of course, won the regular season by like 3 games last year, won the Big Ten tournament. And they got a lot of guys back, but then they got the guy back, Zach Edey. I mean, 7'4" is 7'4" or 7'5" or whatever he is. He's unstoppable. So he's coming back. He decided not to go into the draft, coming back to Purdue, and they got 24 first-place votes as well, and they are ranked number 1. Michigan State is ranked number 2. They got the 4 remaining first-place votes, but they come in at number 2. They got the bulk of that Sweet 16 team back, and they might be the premier perimeter team in the Big Ten with Tyson Walker and A.J. Hoggard and Jaden Akins as well. Maryland looking to have a good year. They're at number 4, and rounding out the top 5 is Wisconsin. Indiana in at number 6. Remember, Mike Woodson's got to replace Jalen Hood-Schifino and Trace Jackson-Davis. Both of those guys went into the NBA, and they were the bulk of Indiana's scoring this past year. Ohio State comes in at number 7. Northwestern is at 8. And I'm just glad we get another year of Boo Buie because his name is fun to say. He's fun to watch. Boo Buie and Northwestern in at number 8. Iowa at number 9. Rutgers rounds out the top 10 in the men's basketball poll from the media. Michigan is at number 11. 3 of their top scorers are gone. Hunter Dickinson, as you know, transferred out, went to Kansas looking for better NIL deals. Kobe Buffkin and Jet Howard, Juwan Howard's son, are now in the NBA. They both went in the first round. And even now, I'm still thinking, with those 3 players, how did Juwan Howard not get Michigan into the NCAA tournament? It's puzzling. It's very puzzling. I don't want to knock anybody. It's just puzzling. At number 12, Nebraska, Penn State at 13, and at number 14, Minnesota rounds it out. Also, regarding the players and the all Big Ten first team, Zach Edey got all but 1 vote, so he's in. The rest of the first team includes Maryland's Jameer Young, Illinois with Terrence Shannon Jr., Northwestern, Boo Buie, and Tyson Walker from Michigan State. In fact, he got the one other first place vote that, or the one vote that Zach Edey did not get. So basketball season's right around the corner. Very excited about that as well. But we've got plenty of football going on. And I want to take this moment to thank you for watching and listening, however you consume this podcast, whenever you do. You guys that are here every day, if you're an everydayer, I love you. Thank you very much. I always appreciate that. I always ask everybody to subscribe. A little black button down below. Just click it. It's free. No other obligation. And you're in our Big Ten club. It's that simple. Also, feel free to share this with somebody. You got a Big Ten alum or a friend that would be interested. If every one of you just shared this with one person, boom, double in size. We would really appreciate it. So subscribe, share, follow, Locked On Big Ten. And also don't forget our Fridays, the Locked On College Football Kickoff Live show every Friday from 11 a.m. to noon on this channel and all the other Big Ten college channels as well. All right, what we do in the middle of the week, my turn to rank all the football teams in the Big Ten. That's right. My power rankings are coming up next. We'll see where your team ranks and get your reaction to that as well. That's in 1 minute right here on Locked On Big Ten. Do you know what Prize Picks is? Prize Picks is the largest independently owned daily fantasy sports platform in North America. And they're the easiest and most exciting one to play. It's just you against the numbers. That's it. You're not going against other players, any pros or sharks out there. It's just you and the numbers. You pick more than or less than with a group of 2 to 6 players and their stat projections, and then you watch your winnings roll in. So let me give you an example. Say you take Josh Jacobs, the running back, that's 60 yards, and Patrick Mahomes with 2 touchdowns, 2 passing touchdowns. You group those 2 players together and you say more than or less than on those stats. That's it. It's simple. And they also, Prize Pick also offers weekly promotions that can lead to big payouts like Taco Tuesday, for example. Each Tuesday, Prize Picks discounts select player projections up to 25% to provide you even more value. You get to impress your friends with your sports knowledge. You get to impress your friends with how much money you get. I mean, that's pretty cool. Here's what you need to do. Go to prizepicks.com/lockedoncollege and use the code LOCKEDONCollege for a first deposit match up to $100. Again, go to prizepicks.com/lockedoncollege and use the code LOCKEDONCollege for a first deposit match up to $100. It's Prize Picks. Check it out. It is fun and easy. Daily fantasy sports made easy. All right, so it is time for our power rankings. Our Locked On Big Ten power rankings for football for the week. We always do this in the middle of the week. I think we have a pretty good list here. See if you agree or disagree with any of it. But let me put it on the screen if you're watching on video. If you're only listening on audio, we'll try and describe this for you. All righty. And I know I got the Michigan Wolverines at number 1. Look, I hate to say that. I hesitate to say that this is a perfect football team because there's no such thing as a perfect football team, but this is a perfect football team. Every facet of the game is strong. and they can play any style of football. They don't make mistakes. They've had one penalty in the last 2 games. The one game they had no penalties. It's unreal. I'm putting the Ohio State Buckeyes at number 2, right on their tail. Right on their tail. If the Ohio State Buckeyes could play like they did in the 4th quarter against Maryland, and not so much the first half of the Maryland game, they'd be right up there at the top as well. So maybe they can carry on the momentum from the second half of the Maryland game. Penn State Nittany Lions coming off a bye, can be kind of quiet. The schedule starts getting tough for them in 2 weeks. Got them in at number 3. Had the Maryland Terps at number 4 before the weekend. This was a big game going into Ohio State to see if they can be one of the big boys, crack the top 3. Unfortunately, they couldn't. Too many mistakes in that Ohio State game, but still respectable. They're still going to have a good season, and I'm still keeping them at number 4. At number 5, I got the Iowa Hawkeyes. At number 6, I have the Wisconsin Badgers. I can flip those. I think Saturday's game between the 2 of them is going to be pretty tight-knit. We'll see if we flip-flop the list next week. Rutgers coming in at number 7. Got the Nebraska Cornhuskers at number 8. It feels like Matt Rule is finally getting a feel for what this football team is, and we'll see what they do on the back half of this season. Minnesota Golden Gophers at number 9. This is a talented team. They have some weaknesses, though. They're not a complete team, but they have some really big strengths as well. So, they're a fun team to watch. Got the Michigan State Spartans at number 10. I don't know what to do with the Spartans. Maybe a quarterback change this weekend. We all know about the coaching situation. It's kind of tough. Northwestern Wildcats at number 11. They are 3-3. Who would have thought that? 500 at this point of the season for Northwestern. Congratulations to them. Purdue Boilermakers still trying to figure things out at number 12, but this is a team with talent. Don't overlook them. The Illinois Fighting Illini at number 13. I think it's a disappointing year for them so far. Look, I know they had a nice year last year with an 8-win team. It's going to be tough to duplicate that because they did lose a lot of nice talent to the NFL, but they haven't quite figured it out yet. And, of course, the Indiana Hoosiers at number 14, brand new offensive coordinator this week. And congratulations. What do you get to do for your first game? Well, you get to go to Ann Arbor and take on Michigan. Good luck against that defense. We'll see what happens. So, anyway, as I mentioned before, there are many ways for you to be in touch with me and me with you. And we can start with Twitter at TalkBig10 with the number 10. See our website down on the bottom, talkbig10.com. That's with the number 10, talkbig10.com. And, of course, you can always hit us up on YouTube. Please, if you haven't, seriously, subscribe, please. The little black button on the bottom, and you're good to go. And you can follow this podcast on your favorite podcast app. And you get the latest episode of Locked On Big Ten as soon as it becomes available each and every day. We release these things first thing in the morning, both on video and audio for your car ride, if that's what you would prefer. And now I'm inviting you to check out the Locked On Sports Today podcast for the latest on everything else going on in sports. And I hope you have a great day. And I thank you for checking us out today. As usual, I can't wait till we meet again tomorrow. I'm Craig Shemon for Locked On Big Ten.